Welcome to the Bankview Crime Prevention Open House, November 19, 6:30 p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. My name is Mark MacGillivray. I'm on the Crime Prevention Committee for Marda Loop. Typically, every year we do an open house. And what happens this year, unfortunately, it was canceled due to COVID. And so we came up with a nutty idea of doing it online. And what we found is that it's a lot easier for people to attend. As a committee, we don't have to buy pizza for everybody. We don't have to set up chairs. And everyone can be in the comfort of their own home. Also, it enables us to record the contents of this, and I do take the contents of this and I make YouTube videos, which enables people who were unable to make the Zoom meeting to review that information to get the tips on how to make their community safe. We have two special guests with us, Richard Wall, Senior Constable with the Calgary Police Service. He's been policing for about 24 years, with 15 of those being with the Calgary Police Service, and he has been acting for the last 6 years as the Community Resource Officer. We also have Graydon Tranquilla, who is a lead for Nextdoor.com. He's also the director of the Crime Prevention Committee in Marda Loop as well. So he'll be speaking about how he's used Nextdoor in his community and even to the level of on his street to help reduce crime. The agenda for the meeting is we did send out a pre-event survey, which I'll share the results with you. We'll then transfer over to talking about social media with Graydon, and then bring it over to the star of the show, Senior Constable Rich Wall, who will give his presentation of his experience with crime in the Bankview community, and then open it up to question and answers. And then finally, we'll draw it back to a close for thank yous, and we'll also do a door prize draw. Now, what's very, very important to know is that Bankview itself does not have a crime prevention committee. If you're interested in joining a committee and helping us out, do contact Nigel Lalande, the general manager, at gm@bankview.org. If you're not too sure and you want to know what a crime prevention committee does, you can drop me an email at mark.mcgillivray@gmail.com. Because my email is a bit of an alphabet soup, I'll just leave that up for about 10 seconds. So if you do want to take a note or a screenshot or whatnot, that you can. Embarrassed pause, just kidding. Next. So what I always like to do whenever we get a community together is also take this opportunity to promote a local business. The Marda Loop Community Association did a draw for 2 $25 gift certificates for Volo's Pizza, which I'm sure many of you in Bankview do know of. This time around, the Asylum for Art is going to give away 2 tickets for Jeremy Genu at the Academy on Saturday, December 5th at 6 p.m. So we'll be making the draw at the end of the day. If, for example, you win the draw and you can't attend or you don't feel comfortable attending, then please let me know in the text box that you cannot, and then I'll go and draw another name. Okay, survey results. There's actually 2 surveys that were sent out. One I sent out to all the invitees, and also on Nextdoor, focused on the community of Bankview, and we got 15 responses back. In addition to this, Nigel, the GM, sent out a message to the Bankview Community Association members and had 48 respondents. And we basically saw largely the same results. What we basically saw was that people believe that the major problem in Bankview is residential break and enter, either home or garage, or theft from a vehicle. These are basically overwhelmingly the things that we are chiefly concerned about in the community. The other areas that we asked about, robberies, there were 20% that believed that that was a major problem, but assaults and actual vehicle thefts were considered to be quite low. And so a lot of the comments have been in and around dealing with the transitory population, homeless people, but also people that see sort of systematic attempts to break into their vehicles or break into their homes or break into their garage, thefts of bicycles, these sorts of things, which as we get into it, we'll be talking about as seeing these as crimes of opportunity. A lot of people, when they think about crime, they think that it's basically an individual deciding to perpetrate a crime against a specific individual. But what we're seeing is that we're seeing individuals and groups of individuals basically going through a community and simply looking for targets of opportunity, going down the street, checking door handles of cars, or checking garage doors as well. So that's kind of the things that we're going to be dealing with, and we'll be talking about those solutions to those kinds of things. What's encouraging to note is that the actual crime in Bankview does reflect these figures. So the fact that by far the largest amount of theft, 170, is this kind of opportunistic theft from vehicle, and then followed by break and enters, either dwelling or commercial. So, and that's for the 12 months. Now, I'd like to just draw everyone's attention to the fact that this is a very weird chart. The most recent date is on the left, which is October 2020. And as you go off to the right, it's more and more in the past. And what we've sort of seen is, especially compared to November of 2019, we're looking at approximately half of the amount of crime that we typically see at this time of year. And to compare Bankview to the communities in the surrounding area, we are very much in the top half, but very, very, very similar to the communities with the same profile. So Richmond, Nob Hill, Sunalta, South Calgary, they're all experiencing very similar levels and kinds of crime. So when we talk about the fact that we're talking about individuals and groups of individuals going through a community, looking for those opportunistic areas, that's exactly what we're seeing here. And to sort of give everyone sort of a situation of where things are, Sunalta is to the north of Bankview, Lower Mount Royal and Upper Mount Royal are to the east. South Calgary is appropriately to the south, and Richmond Nob Hill is to the west. So these are the communities that we're seeing almost a uniform kind of crime that's happening in the area. With respect to the comments that were made during the survey, there was a lot of concern directed towards Buckmaster Park, a lot of homeless people, drug use, some crimes and assaults, those things in that area. So this might be an area that Constable Wall might want to address in his comments on the things that might be done to do this. Also, with the comments, in addition to people's concerns about their own personal safety and experience, there's also this idea that we needed to sort of focus on making the community safer with things like better lighting, more community interaction, those sorts of things, and we'll be addressing those as well. So, and again, just to mention again, if you're interested in volunteering, do reach out to either myself or Nigel Lalande at gm@bankview.ca. So, not to put too fine a point on it. Now to our guests. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Graydon Tranquilla. Go ahead, Graydon.
Good day, everyone. Good to see a great turnout tonight. Very encouraging. My name is Graydon Tranquilla. I'm the Director of Crime Prevention for Marda Community Association. And should anyone need to get in touch with me, I'm at crimeprevention@mardaloop.com. But the point of my topic tonight here is a social media platform that we believe is very highly suited for crime prevention, and it is very focused on communities. So unlike other social media sites that are pretty much worldwide, no boundaries, Nextdoor is very specific to each community, and the boundaries between communities are security boundaries, and we have in the 3 areas served by Marda Loop Community Association, which are South Calgary, Altadore, and Garrison Woods. We already have nearly 2,000 members as of now, and it started roughly September last year. And it's grown very rapidly. It's something that others, each of you in your communities might want to consider. What's so special about Nextdoor? Well, it specifically targets communities, so it's very focused on our immediate needs in our own areas. It has some good security so that there's a pretty good chance you won't get nefarious people joining. There's a security issue to get in. Your email is stored on the server, but it's not shared with other members. So your information is confidential, and the risk of ID theft and so on is certainly very low. How does Nextdoor work? Well, it's a way that neighbors are able to get in touch with each other online, but it also encourages neighbors to get out and get boots on the ground and meet each other. Of course, right now during the pandemic, that's not working out so well. But we live in some areas here that are walking communities, and it can be very effective. So we are able to help each other out in many ways, whether it's snow angels in the winter, clearing sidewalks for our neighbors and helping out. Keeping an eye open for your neighbor's property when they decide to go on vacation. Just recently, I saw a post where someone had a parcel delivered, but it was to the wrong address. It wasn't there, so they put out a request to the 700 members in the community, and within a matter of hours, the right person got in touch, and the parcel was relocated to the right address. Also, neighbors are able to work together and collaborate against crime. We know that the criminals are getting smarter and working in teams. Well, we can also work in teams, and Nextdoor is a very powerful social media platform for us to coordinate and find ways to work together to reduce crime. In the case of COVID-19, Nextdoor was first on the starting block to come up with a help map where people could actually join in, and their relative position in the community would pop up on a background map. And I'll try to show you a shot here in a moment. And it enabled people to gain a perspective on who nearby is actually working to help out, to help deliver groceries for those who are stuck inside their homes because of restrictions, and do various things to help each other. So that's just one example there. Also, there's a buy, sell, and free section, similar to what, for example, Facebook offers, but it is very specific to our local communities. And because of the security issues in becoming a member, the probability that someone's going to sell something that is stolen is much lower than other methods. It also has a separate business category, so you won't get flooded with business postings that overwhelm the system and make it not enjoyable to coordinate and communicate with your neighbors. It is, let's see, as you know, some of you have probably attended block parties. Just a little history, how we were able to actually get our crime down in our area, in Garrison Woods, one street in particular, started with a block party, but we were lacking a social media platform that really worked well. We were collecting emails manually, collecting phone numbers manually. And it worked on our street, but after getting 27 neighbors to sign up, it became a big work effort. Nextdoor alleviated a lot of that challenge and made it automatic. So in terms of our attempts to help curb crime using Nextdoor, we make good use of security cameras. I was the first to have one on our street. We now have 14 security cameras. And because of the awareness factor, we have been able to change the behavior of our neighbors all along our street. We've really locked things down tight. And what has happened is the vehicle prowlers, vehicle and garage prowlers, have learned a lesson from what we've done. They've learned that this fishing hole is dried up, and they communicate with each other, and they soon learn that there's nothing happening here of any value to them, and they move on to easier territories. So I'm not going to talk much longer here. We're going to hand it over to Constable Rich Wall shortly. But the use of security cameras, we have literally 20-some security videos of people prowling around after dark, covering a lot of territory at night, often using bicycles, sometimes working in teams, pulling door handles as a first step. And if the door handles doors are locked and they can't see anything of value in the vehicles, they move on fairly quickly. So at this point, I think I've said enough, and I will hand it over to Constable Rich Wall, who will talk more about the issues of crime.
Hey everyone. So I'm Rich Wall. I'm the District 2 CRO for the Zone of 2-1. And I'll give you a little bit of background. So I cover everything from 14th Street to just the other side of Crowchild Trail, from 17th Avenue to the Weaselhead, so North Glenmore Park. I deal with all of the long-term strategies. So we have car crews that are out there dealing with calls, emergency calls 24/7. I deal with crime trends, drug houses. I do everything from monitoring people, offenders in the community. I do an awful lot of work with the elderly, and we do an awful lot of work with mental health teams as well. So basically anything, it falls on my desk within that area. We have 4 CROs in District 2. We cover everything from 14th Street to the western city limits. We cover Bowness, Valley Ridge, Crestmont, and Montgomery on the north side of the river there. And then we cover everything all the way to the Sutina Reserve. So we cover quite a large area. That's District 2. And as I said, we deal with all the long-term strategies. So I cover 13 communities. And we're obviously going to talk predominantly about Bankview tonight, but it's also interesting that we need to bring in some of the other communities that we border to. 14th Street on the east side is District 1. That's the downtown that's run out of Ramsey. And then on the west side of 14th Street is us. And so Bankview, Altadore, South Calgary, Sunalta are all deemed as inner city communities. You're very close to the downtown core. And of course, we get a lot of bleed over. So we're quite unique because we are highly residential, but we're literally bolted onto the downtown core. And, you know, the downtown core has over 57,000 calls a year. We are close to 35,000 plus calls in District 2 alone, which we manage with 10 patrol teams. So we cover a very high dense population, which is very unique because we have inner city and outer city communities, we have residential housing, we have condominiums, we have an awful lot of social housing as well. So that all plays a part in what we deal with on a daily basis. So just we'll go through some of the crime issues that we've got that's going on in Bankview and that we've historically always had an issue with, and how they rise and fall depending on everything from the weather to whatever's going on in the community. So with that table that was put up by Mark there's a couple of things that we need to explain about the table. The table that was put up there is put out by the Source magazine, which is a community magazine, and they take a lot of their figures from the Calgary.ca website. But there's an awful lot of way of interpreting those numbers. And so we'll go through those in a second. And also social media. I know Graydon's talked about Nextdoor, but some of the things that we deal with on the Facebook side, Kijiji, movement of stolen property, that sort of stuff, we'll talk about that as well. So right now, just to give you some stats, of all of our main issue around break-in enters is not residential. Our residential break-in enters are extremely low. And I'll give you an idea. We've had one reported residential break-in enter in the last 30 days. That's just one. A residential break-in enter is where someone actually goes into the accommodating areas of the home. That's not your detached garages. Detached garages have their own break-in enter classification, and we would classify them as other. And then we have commercial break-in enters, which is actually businesses. So here's some pretty crazy numbers, and I don't think people really realize until we tell them. In 90% of all of our car prowlings, property was on view, and 90% of those vehicles were unlocked. For break-in enters, 85% of all of our detached garage break-in enters are unlocked. So we're not talking about people kicking doors in here. We're talking about people literally trying door handles and the doors open and away they go. And that's how we get most of our break-in enters in Bankview. Our residential break-in enter levels are very, very low. And believe it or not, they're quite low across the entire city. Like Mark was saying, with crimes of opportunity, a lot of our offenders don't want conflict with people at home. So what they will do is they'll see if there's anything loose in the backyard, or they'll try they'll actually try the garage. There's a question just popped up there. Yes, if the door is open on a property, it's still a break-in enter. Break-in enter is a term. Anyone that breaks or walks through the threshold of a building that is deemed to be private without authority with the intention to steal or commit any crime inside is a break-in enter. So if you leave your man door open and your backyard gate open and someone walks in and comes straight into your garage and steals a bike and walks out, even though they've made no damage and probably not even had to physically touch the building, that's a break-in enter. Theft is something where you leave your bike in a backyard and it gets taken. Anywhere where they have to enter a building where they don't have the authority to be in there and they have the intent to steal is a break-in enter. So that's that includes attempted break-in enters as well. So with our detached garages, Bankview being as it is as a 100-plus-year-old community, we don't have an awful lot of properties in Bankview where the garages are on the front of the house, same as say like Tuscany or Valley Ridge, for instance. So most of our break-in enters come around detached garages. And what we are also seeing is a classic trend of when a car prowling, which is someone stealing from a vehicle, whether breaking in or just opening the door, when a car prowling is turning into a break-in enter. What we are seeing is, like I said in the stats, that 90% of our vehicles that are entered are unlocked. And what's happening is they are taking the garage door opener and then entering into the garage. So an unlocked vehicle, car prowling, then becomes a detached garage break-in enter. So what we've been working on is a huge amount of crime prevention the last couple of years, things like the 9 p.m. routine, which we'll talk about in a minute, and doing an awful lot of things like this, virtual crime prevention nights, community meetings, and just talking to people on the street, and also passing on that information when the officers are actually dealing with the call. So we've got some pretty alarming stats in the community when we are in the 85 and 90% for unlocked and insecure property. And just to explain something, people think that the Calgary Police or my job is to keep your property safe. That is not the case. Otherwise, if that was the case, you'd be buying your insurance from the Calgary Police Service. I don't go around the streets trying door handles. I don't go around trying your garage door handles or even your front door handles. That is the obligation of the property owner, the house owner, to keep the property safe, secure and operable. So if you leave your vehicle unlocked, it's not the Calgary Police's fault that it happened. What our job is and our duty is that we will provide as much crime prevention advice to allow the public to change their behaviour to keep themselves safe. But what we do is our duty is to preserve life, preserve property from damage, if we can get to it in time, i.e. if we find an offender getting in a car, and then to investigate that offence and bring those offenders to justice. That's our core duties. And so, you know, I do go to a lot of events and like, well, the Calgary Police should have done this. Well, hold on, if your front doors are open or your garage is unlocked and someone enters, that's not the Calgary Police's duty. That is you as a homeowner. So what we're actually saying to a lot of homeowners is like, if you keep property out of your vehicle, so it's not on view, and you lock your vehicle, there's no reason for anyone to go in it. And we've interviewed hundreds of offenders in my 25 years of policing, and they'll tell you, if there's something in the car to go after, that's why they want to go in. If they look in and the door's locked and there's nothing in there, they move on. So it's totally crimes of opportunity right now. We also have the fentanyl and opioid epidemic issues that's going on right now, and that is pushing a lot of our opportunist crime. So anywhere where someone can make money quick to feed their habit is a lot of the driving force behind what we're dealing with right now. Also, we also get drug houses. Now, it's interesting, I was just going through the stats and stuff since last year. Now, Mark said in October last year, we had doubled the amount of crime. It's amazing how closing down a couple of drug houses can have a massive positive effect on our crime. I don't know if anyone remembers, but 1819 17th Street, or the old Bell Manor on 17th Street, was a major issue for Bankview. And everyone's nodding like, yeah, I remember that one. It was a nightmare. It took us nearly a year to shut it down. We had, I'd say, a cooperative building owner that had taken over a property that was housing people for social agencies, but it wasn't controlled very well. And we saw our social disorder explode. And what we tend to see when we have a problematic address within the community is when people are coming into it and leaving it, they commit crime in both directions. And that's what we were seeing. So one of the things that I do for my background is I'm a surveillance trained guy. So I will spend nights sitting in unmarked cars, people not even knowing I'm there, and I've been watching guys walk down the street, trying door handle after door handle after door handle, and then follow them straight back to 1819, and then we'd arrest them when they came out. So we are able to link a lot of our drug houses and our social disorder houses to crime within the community. So we shut that down at the end of November last year. And since then, our crime on 17th Street and that periphery has collapsed. We do get drug houses, and I'll go through the process of what we do to deal with them. First of all, we get information from officers that have dealt with calls there, or you, the community. A lot of people think the police know everything. We don't. We need you guys to tell us what's going on. And we normally get information from phone calls to me, through Crime Stoppers tips, people coming into the police station when we didn't have a pandemic on, and they would come in and tell us the information. And then that information, we will take it and we will try and corroborate it and see what we actually have. Because sometimes we can have information to say there's a drug house, and we will actually find out it may not be, it just may be strange behavior at home, or it may have some other explanation. Once we corroborate that we have a drug house, we have various resources within the city that are covert, plain clothes, or overt, in uniform, that will go and deal with it. Once we establish we have enough information that we have a criminal offence, we will now develop that file to the point where we have the grounds to get what's called a search warrant. Give you an idea of a search warrant, we'll show everyone here, but they're about 16 pages long. Once we've got that, we go to court, we get it authorised, and then we will execute that search warrant to get into the house to see what we have. We also have an issue, especially in Bankview, around abandoned properties. And I know this is close to a lot of people's heart. 21 days. And what we will do is we will throw as much resources as we can to that, whether they're plain clothes or uniform. Sometimes you might think that, you know, Hawk the helicopter is always dealing with like 3,500, 3,700 calls a year. We also use it to patrol sometimes because it has a better eye for us to cover a larger area. We do everything from we get bylaw in there. We've had even transit officers get involved in, especially Sunalta, because of the issues around the train station there. So we come up with a strategy and we will deal with that problem for 21 days. If it doesn't get fixed, we roll it over and we keep dealing with it until it's dealt with. And once we've dealt with that, whether we've arrested people or the offenders have moved on to another part of the city, then we'll move on to the next problem. So we're pretty successful in doing that. We spend every month, I'm going to say, between 250 and 400 man hours of specific directed patrol time for a problem. So dealing with a drug house can be very expensive unless we get that smoking gun sometimes that gets us through the door for a warrant to shut it down quickly. Also, we have an issue around Bankview with some of the older condo buildings and some of the older homes where we have problematic landlords. Landlords can cause us a great deal of problems because whenever we get involved, it costs them money. And that is around maybe crime prevention. We get phone calls saying the front doors are hanging off or the security's poor in the building. We'll come and have a look at that building. We'll do a quick assessment on them and we'll make some recommendations. And it's up to the condo or building owner to fix that. They don't kind of like us telling them they've got to spend, you know, $250 on a new lock. And sometimes we get downright uncooperative ones that are literally harboring offenders and will obstruct us to stop us from dealing with an issue. And so that's another thing that slows us down. And we have to come up with thinking out of the box sometimes to deal with those issues. Bankview is particularly problematic for that because we have an awful lot of older properties. And some of those older properties are in, not in the best condition because people are unwilling to spend money or can't spend money on them. And what they do is they lower the rent to get certain people into some of those accommodations. And what ends up happening is some of our offenders utilize that way in. And so we do have we sometimes have a lot of issues around that. We probably make, I'm going to say, over a dozen in the way of significant arrests within the Bankview on the 14th Street corridor, which will cover Outdoor, Bankview, Sunalta, right the way down to the river, because they're all linked. And those significant arrests can be a main player. We may have an offender that we know is in the area doing car prowling. We're trying to catch him red-handed, but he might get arrested for other offences that he's committed somewhere else in the city. And sometimes our crime will just stop. Sometimes there's no rhyme and reason. Sometimes it's they've moved on to another area or they've been arrested somewhere else in the city. We do get that, and we work all together as districts. There's a high flow of information and intelligence that goes between all the district CROs, the analysts, and all the patrol teams. We're not, although we're one city with 8 districts, we are literally one giant district in a way from when it comes to communication, which is good. What else have I got here? So what we tend to see with Bankview is a bit of bleed over from the downtown core. The 17th Avenue, 14th Street area is one of the biggest open air drug markets in the city. The McDonald's has always been, in the 15 years I've been a cop in the city, a problem. And I was a beat copper in downtown for 6 years. We spent an awful lot of time there. And we tend to find around McDonald's, unfortunately, and some of the fast food 24-hour businesses that we do get an awful lot of what's called social disorder. And with that 17th Avenue, 14th Street, and the 14th Street corridor, which links 2 districts through 1 district to 3 district, which is the north side of the river, we do get an awful lot of transportation of offenders through there and crime. So 1, 2, and 3, we work a lot on the 14th Street corridor, and we get a lot of bleed over from the downtown core, specifically 17th Avenue. And that's something that we do an awful lot of operations on. Also, we do get similar issues from Westbrook. And as you know, Westbrook to downtown is linked by 17th Avenue. So we do tend to get some issues on there. So we're always working in those areas and dealing with them. I'll address on the survey, there was some issues around Buckmaster Park. I haven't had a phone call on Buckmaster Park in 8 months. And I just ran the calls, and we've had 3 calls since the beginning of this year. So if there's issues going on there, I really want to know about them. Like I said before, we don't know everything, and we really rely on the public to give us an awful lot of information, because you live there and you've got eyes on it and you walk through it. And as much as we spend a huge amount of time in those communities, we don't see everything. So sometimes we need you as our eyes. And so we've had issues around drug paraphernalia in the past, and we've been in there and done cleanups. I know that I did a CPTED, which is a crime prevention through environmental design assessment, in there with the city about 3 years ago, and I know some money was spent in there. But now that it's popped up on my radar, I'm going to start looking at it a little bit deeper if there are some issues there. I know around homelessness, we'll talk about that now. Around homelessness, we do get a lot of transient people within Bankview because of 14th Street, because we're so close to downtown. But more so right now because of COVID. And what we've seen is a dispersal of homeless from the downtown core, where there's been cases inside the drop-in centre and other social housing within the core. And so the homeless, being our most vulnerable population, they kind of started to police themselves and started to get themselves safe. So they came out the core. We currently have homeless camps as far as Aspen. So what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to find them all. We work with the PAL team from Bylaw, which is an amazing group of people. They work with CUPS and all the different agencies. They find all the homeless camps. They get all the agencies to come in and see if they can get housing for people. And what we've been doing is monitoring all the homeless camps. If it's just a homeless camp where someone's sleeping, keeping out the way of the COVID side of things, trying to stay safe, we're monitoring them, making sure they're okay, and keeping in contact with them. If we find out that that homeless camp, if that homeless camp then becomes crime related, that's when we start getting into that area, and we will start shutting that camp down and either arresting those people, because what we are finding is a lot of stolen bikes. I'm a huge cyclist myself, massive cyclist. I do a lot of racing. All my bikes stay in my basement, so I'm a bit hypersensitive to people stealing bikes. I don't like that. And what we are finding is a lot of bikes in homeless camps. We don't need a search warrant to seize that. If we believe, because it's on plain view outside of a residence, we believe it's involved in crime, we can immediately seize it and we'll start investigating it. And what we tend to do is, once we've found out through whether it's Bike Index or Century, our crime reporting system, online, Facebook, social media, whatever it may be, once we find out that bike is stolen, we'll go and arrest that offender. And if they've moved on, we'll put warrants out for their arrest. So yeah, we're dealing an awful lot with the homeless. We work, Calgary Police, I'm going to say, is probably one of the best in North America for working with social agencies when it comes to homelessness. We have Source Downtown, which was a massive project that's been going on for over 5 years within the downtown core, which was initiated by Calgary Police. And what we do is we take that person, if they need help with housing, whatever it may be, we'll take them to Source. And all the social agencies from CUPS to you name it are all based in there. And we've had a great deal of success with that. But we do have a large homeless population within Calgary, and being an inner city community, we are affected by some of the issues that come with that. But most of your homeless guys are decent people. They're not involved in crime. We do have people that are involved in crime, believe me, we know who they are. But it's very hard to trace them because they're so transient. When it comes to robberies, we've had 1 reported robbery in Bankview this year. That was a fight that happened at a house party. A guy went outside, got in a fight with another guy, and when he punched him unconscious on the floor, he stole his phone. So street robberies are very, very rare in Calgary. We do get them, but in a comparison of crime, very, very low, in our very lowest numbers. Robbery is theft or with a threat of or an act of violence. Robbery is not you drop your wallet on the floor and you go back 10 minutes and it's gone. That's theft. Robbery is where someone physically gets hold of you or physically threatens you to get something from you. And robbery is very low in the city, so we're pretty good. So I know that there's an awful lot of communication that goes on within the community on Facebook pages. They help us a lot, but they're also a real hindrance and they really blow people up. And so I would suggest that you take all of your information from credible sources. So what I would say to you guys is that robbery is very, very low crime in the city, even in the downtown core. And what we do see for robberies, most of our reported robberies sometimes revolve around the transient population, where anything to them is very, very important, and people try and take it from them. So, so we are dealing with that. Now I see a guy turning up. I see just some comments here about the guy that goes around writing the graffiti on everything. We know who he is. We have done operations on him, and he has been arrested and charged. Without going into it too much, we have a gentleman who clearly has some issues, and we've tried to connect him with certain groups. He's very, very hard to deal with. We've caught him red-handed doing it. We have charged him, and it is a problem. We're trying to work on it right now. It's not just a Bankview issue. We are talking about a guy that roams throughout the city and does it. So we are aware of it. We do know about him. He's the guy that walks around with the sort of the camo pants on. He doesn't like us. He's quite hard to deal with from our point of view. But trying to catch him red-handed is difficult because he moves around at night. Although he does move during the day, most of his offending is done during the night. So we are still working on that, and we will continue to work on that because he does cause an awful lot of money and damage. So we are invested in dealing with him, but he doesn't actually have a tag. He uses every swear word under the sun, and anything that comes into his head, he'll write it down, and some of it's very, very offensive. So you've probably seen it on everything from garbage cans to city property to benches. It's written on there. It's even as far as River Park, just off of 14A Street near 50th Ave. We've had reports of it up there. So it's everywhere. We are working with a whole different bunch of agencies to deal with that gentleman. But it's a very, very tough case to deal with because we can't limit his movement. Even if we arrest him, we can put criminal conditions on him, but those criminal conditions we can't go too far with them because of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and they're normally put on him by a judge. The judge makes the decision. So we've been working on that for about 2 years. He has had criminal charges. Just to give you an idea, anything with theft or a mischief, which is damage to property, if it's under $5,000, the charge is no different if I stole this pen. Okay, so sometimes they're looked at by the courts very lightly, and so that's why we end up doing a lot of community impact statements with the courts on that. So we are working on that one. Trying to look at anything else here. We've dealt with homeless camps. 9 p.m. routine. So you might have seen this on social media. Something that looks like this. We've sent it out digitally all across the city. Bang for buck, probably the best project we've ever done. It was actually started by a small sheriff's department down the States, and we piggybacked off it. And so what we've done, we've given out thousands of these, and it's a checklist. It's a reminder for everybody that after 9 p.m., these are the things that you should be doing. Just make sure there's no valuables on view in your vehicle. If you have valuables, lock them in the trunk. Close your overhead garage doors. I don't know if anyone here's probably had a phone call from me at 2 o'clock in the morning when I drive around. If I find a garage door open, I'm going to run your plate, find out who you are, give you a call and say your garage door's open and wake you up to tell you to close that door. Lock all your doors and your vehicles. I know this sounds like common sense stuff, but this is the way they're getting in. Make sure your windows are locked. If you're home during the summer and it's hot, I get it, but make sure your windows are locked in the winter. And if you haven't got locks, see if you can get them. And turn on an exterior light. That's a huge one. We are finding, and certainly having come from being a policeman for 10 years in London, England, where within 100 meters you'll walk through 25 cameras. Here in Canada, when I came here in 2005, CCTV was like it was like a rarity on calls if we asked for it. We are seeing more and more of it. Doorbell cameras, cheap CCTV systems. You can get a CCTV system for an entire house for $350 from Costco now. They run on a server, not on videotapes. Fantastic quality, but we find that the more light they have, the better quality we get. And so we are very successful with CCTV, everything from screenshots to stuff getting sent to me. We get it through Nextdoor, through Graydon, and we identify our offenders pretty quick. And with the exterior light, it really helps the system capture as much quality as possible, and it works very, very well. And if you want that, I can get that sent out even more, and we can get that pushed out. There is no grant that I know of, unless you're an organisation to get money to put CCTV up. I know that there is something through the province that will deal with things like churches and large organisation, non-profit organisations, that sort of thing. But for your private residential home, I don't think there is. But I'm sure if you check online, you may surprise, you might find something, but I don't think there is. CCTV has two things. Number one, it allows us to get evidence to identify the offender, to lay the charge, because without identity in the court of law, we don't have a charge. But what it also is a physical deterrent. What we have seen is that people have actually painted cameras bright yellow. It's not a secret, it's very overt, it's not covert. And so some of them have built-in lights that when there's a little bit of motion, the light lights up around the actual lens and lights up the area. That's enough to scare them off. We know that they really don't like CCTV, because the worst kind of evidence that we actually deal with, and it's probably a bit of a shock to people, but eyewitness evidence from a member of the public is the worst evidence that we deal with, because it can be called into question so much within the court of law, and everybody interprets things differently. When it's on a still off a digital camera, it's pretty hard to question it. So we really do like CCTV. I'm a big fan of CCTV. So what we're talking about is a common sense approach to crime. And we can tell you right now, you have the full commitment of us as a district. We took Bankview back over 4 years ago, after it was moved around, when the city boundaries were moved. And what we found was that Bankview wasn't getting any police coverage because it was run by District 1. And as you know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So the downtown core was taking all the resources because of the amount of calls it got. And Bankview and Altadore and South Calgary weren't getting the police coverage. We took it over 4 years ago. The coverage now in there is night and day. So you're probably always going to see a police car in there patrolling through, going to a call. Guys and girls will sit in there and actually type up their reports for crime from another area in Bankview and those areas, because we tell them to do that as a visible deterrent to offenders. And basically, we don't always police to crime levels. We police to the fear of crime. So if people feel unsafe in a community, there's normally a reason for that. And people think, well, if there's no crime there, the police don't go in there. We go everywhere we can. We are a 24-hour agency. We never stop, even Christmas Day. If we're not dealing with calls where the guys and girls are into direct to patrol areas and into those areas. So we're doing the best we can. I know you probably see a few police cars at the Starbucks there on 14th Street. That's because there's good coffee there, not because there's crime in Starbucks, but we do try and get there. But we're always on that 14th Street corridor, and so is one district. So you do get an awful lot of police coverage, but the nature of the beast is you are an inner city community, and we get bleed over from downtown. And some of our offenders are transient, and because of that, it's very hard to trace them sometimes, but we do the best we can. I jump on every single drug house that I get information on. I would say if I get 10 Crime Stoppers tips, of 7 of them, it's explainable, or it's being perceived in the wrong way, or it's a neighbour dispute. My next door neighbour's a drug dealer. If they're falling out with the next door neighbour, there's always the best way to just we'll see through it straight away. But sometimes we've actually solved homicides. So one of the reasons I'm a huge proponent of CCTV, I was the search manager for the Nathan O'Brien homicides. I wear different hats. I do all the demonstrations and protests, but I also do a lot of the homicide searches. And so we solved that crime from a motion-activated CCTV camera that got Douglas Garland's truck into the area, and that's how that started. We have had homicides and even very minor crimes solved by CCTV. So CCTV is a big thing for me. I really like it there. But that's basically all I've got for Bankview. Also, just one thing I will say here, we sometimes have struggled in the past with getting a lot of community engagement with Bankview. A lot of that is because we have a lot of short-term lease condominium buildings in there, and I understand that. What I would say to you is this, is if you do rent and you move into an area for 3 months, 6 months, always, no matter where you are in the city or whatever community or wherever you are in Alberta, make sure that you tie into your community association, because we can supply so much information to make you feel a lot better, and also arm you with the information to make you feel safer. And if you are having problems with the security of your building, I do love giving those condominium managers a little phone call and having a meeting with them and giving them either the good news or the bad news about what they need to do. And I will happily advocate for you to push that message to whoever the building owner is, to say that the occupants of that building feel unsafe, and these are the reasons why, and this is what I found. So I'll always advocate for you, and all the CROs will. So that's all I've got right now, and I think we're open to Q&As. Mark?
Okay, thank you, Rich. What we'll do is, at this point, I'm just going to shift up the agenda just a bit. Just want to, since we are such a small group of people, I'm just going to do a quick roundtable. We'll go to each and every one of the participants and just get their impressions of stuff, and if they have any questions, and we'll just go from there. So I'll pick on Graydon first, because he's a veteran to the whole Zoom thing. So Graydon, what are your thoughts?
Well, we've talked a bit about the security cameras, and walking through our neighborhood now, I've seen many dozens of security cameras, both the doorbell type and the larger high definition type. And as Constable Rich Wall has said, really the high definition color is made possible when you have motion detection lighting, which by itself helps a bit. And I'd strongly recommend that people seriously consider one of these types of security cameras. There's quite a few varieties out there, options out there. Nest products is the one that I use, but there's Vivint and Ring, and they're all very good. Generally speaking, the more expensive ones are much better. And the problem with night lighting, or what's it called, infrared night vision, is you don't have colors, but that's not the biggest issue. The colors, even the black and white, are mixed up, where a person may appear to have blonde hair when in fact it's brown, and they may appear to have a white jacket when in fact it may be a dark blue. So that is very limiting information for the police.
Buckmaster Park, if anyone doesn't know, it's...
Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, Rich, sorry, I accidentally muted you.
Oh, terrible.
Okay. You
Okay,
lost your voice there for a second.
that's what we would call a coffee fine. Okay, 21 Avenue is what you're talking about there, Adrian. It runs between 14th Street and all the way to 19th Street. So it's a major cut through, and 21 Avenue has been on our radar for a very long time. We have a system within the city called the Traffic Safety Request. You can go onto the CPS website. If you have a traffic issue around safety, you can fill it out, and as soon as you press send, it goes straight to traffic in the Northeast. And those guys all, they write a lot of tickets. Their job is predominantly to deal with traffic safety. And out of that traffic safety request, there's a number of things that can happen. Number one, they'll send it to the traffic teams. Number two, it'll come to me for me to get the patrol officers. We'll put it in their ear to make sure that they go out there and attack it. And the other one, and this is the one that everyone groans at, is multi-nova. So multi-nova, as you know, is the vehicle sits on the side of the road and flashes and takes pictures and stuff. A lot of people call it the cash cow, or whatever they want to call it. We use it as a monitoring tool. So if we get information to say that 21 Avenue or 20th Street in Altadore is a classic example, it's so fast, oh my God, it's out of control, we'll put Multinova in, and it'll either corroborate, they'll either prove or disprove the allegation, because a lot of the issues that we have around traffic safety in the city is a perception of crime, a perception of speed. So 20th Street, yeah, there's people, so I can write a ticket on probably every single street in the city if I sit there long enough. But there are we have problem streets. So 14th Street's a bit of a racetrack, 21 Avenue is an issue. And so a couple of years ago, I put Multinova in there, and we found out that the speeds were getting a bit high. So that TSR traffic safety request went to Randy McDonald into traffic, who's the residential traffic safety guy. He deals with specific problems, not just large scale problems, specific problems within communities. He went to 21 Avenue, and we did a bunch of enforcement on it. What you've seen is there's been a bunch of projects within Bankview where they've actually enhanced some of the sidewalks, and they've put traffic calming measures in. The city is in charge of infrastructure. We deal with the enforcement side, and we feed information to roads all the time, but it's on the city to actually put the traffic calming in. I don't know, and I can't remember because I deal with so many, but I can't remember if 21 Ave has had any traffic calming. So there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, 311 call to the city, let them know your concerns. They will push those concerns to roads, and if they've got enough concerns and they believe they've got enough money in the budget to do it, they will do an assessment. Well, they always do an assessment, but they will then see from that assessment as to whether they will go forward with traffic calming. And we will then do the enforcement side. So call 311, let them know the issue. Number two, put a traffic safety request in through the CPS website. That will go to traffic, and that will be actioned, and you'll probably get a phone call back on that as to what's been done. I'm well aware of it, and I will push that issue to the patrol teams that when they have any downtime, which is tough these days because we're so busy with calls, to go in there and to look at doing some traffic enforcement in there. If you have continual problems, keep going with those 311 calls and the traffic safety requests into us, and we'll continue to deal with it as a problem.
Excellent.
So a couple of things. Good point about the valuables. Most of our car prowlings around Bankview and Altadar are of small change. So what may not be a lot of money to other people, to homeless people, is gold. So that's a very good point. What's important to us may not be important to us, is important to other people. So that's a very good point. Number two, graffiti. Graffiti is dealt with through the 311 app. The city is very, very good at removing the graffiti if they can. They even have programs in place to remove graffiti free of charge from certain types of organisations, such as churches and places like that, to help them out. If you see graffiti, put it through the 311 app. It goes into the system for Calgary. You may see these teams. They walk around. They drive around, big flatbed truck, and they have a special, like a natural. They use a chemical which is biodegradable and as organic as it can be, to remove some of the worst stuff that we can't really get chemicals to remove. So 311. And they will then push that to the graffiti teams and the contractors, and they will go and deal with it. They deal an awful lot with our fella here that puts the most obnoxious stuff around, especially stuff about the coronavirus, which is interesting. So they've been attacking that as much as possible. Felt tip pen into bare wood on a bench is very hard to remove. So they get to that later when they try and remove, they change the wood over in the summer. But 311, Amanda, make the phone call, go onto the app, don't land it onto your phone. You can do it straight in your app, onto your phone, and it goes straight to them and they will action it. One of the things that comes out of this, and from the crime point of view here, it's a very good point where you pick up about, if things look tatty and stuff like that, and look a mess. Believe it or not, there's actually a connection to crime there. And one of the things I do is what's called a CPTED. It's called Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And so if someone asks me for a CPTED, first thing I do is I go look outside their property. And I do a lot of these with condo buildings, and things like cut grass, trim trees, good lighting, makes a huge difference in a way that if something looks really presentable, it also sends a message that you take your security seriously. And so the pruning of trees and clear sight lines, making sure your grass is kept well, and you look after your plants, or if you have a window that's busted, replace it. You have a light out, you fix it. Those sort of things do play good principles. The one thing about Bankview, which is very unique and is very similar to Bowness in some ways, is it's one of the oldest communities in the whole of Calgary. It's over, I think it's 105 years old, probably more now. I know Nigel will probably have a good number on that, being a historian for Bankview, eh, Nigel? But one of the things that we do see that pop up is that the trees are very well established in there. So like I said to Amanda, the 311 call is where it actually gets actioned. You can send an awful lot of stuff to Evan, and he's a very proactive kind of guy. He's always busy, and I deal with Zev, his assistant, an awful lot. But the connection is the 311 call. If you make the 311 call, or you take a picture and put it through on the app, then they'll come and deal with it from the point of view of a traffic safety issue, if it's blocking signs and that sort of stuff. And they should have a due diligence. And they do normally. Parks or roads will decide who owns it. If the tree's in the park side, then parks will deal with it. If it's on the road, then roads will deal with it. And they will clear that for you. So we have very narrow streets. I know that the snow clearing in Bankview is a major issue. There are roads that we have problems getting up with. Now we have Explorers, and the Tauruses, they have four drive, whereas before with a Crown Vic, it was like trying to get well, it was a nightmare because it had two wheels, two-wheel drive. So we'd have to walk to the call because we couldn't get the van up it. So there are hills and roads and streets that are in Bankview that are problematic from the point of view, especially around snow clearing. Lighting has always been an issue in Bankview, and on the last crime prevention night that we did, which was for Mardeloop, we had a representative from the council, from the councillor's office, who said, you know, it is a problem, but it would cost multi-million dollars to fix it, and they try and keep up with it as much as they can. So from the crime prevention side of stuff, if you see signs of covered in graffiti or blocked by vegetation, 311 call to the city. That's what we can do there. But I think that's the best way of dealing with it. Trying to send it straight to the councillor, unless it's not been actioned once you've done the 311 call, is probably the best way of going through the 311 system. One of the things that comes up on that, Lee, and I'll tell you why, just to be super cautious on that. Number one, we're in pandemic. When we're dealing with what we call sharps, needles, we're very guarded around them, especially around bodily fluids and what have you. Normally when you see that sort of use or needles are dropped, there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, CUPS has a fantastic scheme which is funded. They're amazing people. They're little angels, the CUPS group. They will come and do needle cleanup. So CUPS are very good. Fire department will come and clean up needles as well. And the reason why we have those two people that are doing it is because they have this really good PPE or personal protection equipment to do that. So if you report it to those two agencies, Lee, bless your heart for thinking about going and doing it yourself, but if you give it to those two agencies, one of the things it also enables us to do is to track it. So if we have problem areas where we're not getting phone calls around social disorder, but we're getting more phone calls to those two agencies around the discarding of needles, there's another piece of information that pushes us into that area to see what we can do. And it may not just be around crime enforcement, it may be around the fact that we can get social agencies in there to actually deal with them, the group. The St Alta train station, I'm not going to lie, since the LRT came in, and I used to be the CRO for a 2-3 area when we had, around Scenic Acres, Crowchild Trail, and I had Tuscany. As soon as the LRT went in, we did see a different kind of crime that was coming in because people will ride the train, and we have offenders that actually use the LRT as well. So the St Alta train station, there is a direct link through St Alta to crime in Bankview that comes from that train station. It's a very good starting point for us. The St Alta train station has had a lot of improvements over the years with lighting and cameras, and transit is put it as one of its priorities to patrol it as well. So we're very invested working with our law enforcement partners like Bylaw and Calgary Transit. So St Alta train station has been a problem on and off since it was put in, and we do get a movement of property on there, stolen property. But when it comes to needles, mate, give one of those agencies a call, and if you're unable to get through to them, you can send me an email or put a phone call into District 2 and ask for the CRO for 2-1, and I'll make sure I can get that action for you. But around bodily fluids, it's something that we're really very guarded on, especially for us. We have to be super careful about it. So just look after yourself with that stuff, Lee. we have an epidemical problem, and it's not just for Calgary, it's across the entire country, and that is that bike theft is exploded over the last few years because, well, during lockdown, bicycles became the new toilet paper, basically. If you went to Bow Cycle right now, I don't think you can buy a bike for less than $5,000. So when people see bikes for sale on Kijiji on a good deal, normally it's because it's stolen. So that's where all of our stolen bikes go on Kijiji. It used to be Let Go, but we got rid of that app. It's gone in Calgary, thank God. And we have a lot of undercover resources that do undercover buys on these guys and actually arrest them. So what we have seen is that BMX bikes and stolen bikes as a whole seem to be a very popular mode of transport for some of our offenders. That's not to say that everyone on a bike in Bankview is a criminal, okay? I'm not saying that. But I can tell you right now, some of our people that we see moving through, especially at night in the in like Altadore, Bankview, Sonalta, are in there for, I'm going to say criminal reasons, but we do have a few places in there that are what we call flop houses. A flop house is when we'll have an individual who will rent a place and then invite his friends in to consume drugs there off the street. So although the consumption and possession, well, the possession of drugs is a criminal offence, it's quite minor from the point of view of crime. But what we're seeing is as those people come in to use and consume at that address, and when they leave, they commit crime on the way out and on the way in. And we call them fencing addresses. So they'll steal something from a vehicle or on the street and then fence it, as in give it in exchange for drugs. And then we have a dealer. So what we tend to see is you will see people riding around on BMX bikes. Riding a BMX bike is not a criminal offence. It's a bylaw offence not to have a bell and a light, and that's sometimes how we get to stop them, to find out who they are on lawful probable grounds. That's not carding. Carding is when you ask for someone's details just for the mere presence of being a police officer, and it kind of forces them to illegally give it. That's an old school way of doing things. We're very forward thinking in Calgary on that. We've been in compliance with those regulations for a very long time. What we do is we will move in and we will watch where they go to. So what we would ask is, the information we want is, the information isn't, I see Joe Bloggs on a bike, on a BMX, riding down 26 Ave at 3 in the morning. What I want to know is, he's coming to or from an address regularly, or it's unusual behaviour to have high foot traffic or bicycles coming to and from an address, day or night, that there's property going in and nothing coming out. That's the information that I want. So what we want is not so much quantity, it's quality. And that is the information that I can start an investigation on, Nigel. So when we put that information out and to the group now, if you have someone riding up and down your street at a certain time of day, every day, that's information I want to know, because that will lead me as a starting point to see if they're going to a ratty address. Or they're already at an address and you're seeing them come and go in. We do have a good indicator sometimes with a lot of apartments. If they are low income or low rent apartments, and we start to see a build up of property on the balconies or within the footprint of the building, we generally know we might have a flop house, because most people, you know, I know I do, if I have garbage, it goes in the garbage, but I don't have loads of tons of bikes and old chariots full of stuff and what have you building up on my property. And that's another really good indicator. Or we get social disorder. Social disorder comes in the form of fights and noise and screaming and shouting and foot traffic and disturbance that basically affects the peaceful living of the people around that unit or that building or a house. And that information from people coming and going to a certain residence is the information we need to stop that. I don't know if that clarifies it for you, Nigel, but we need more quality information as to where they're going. If someone makes a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning to a male who's 50 years old on a bicycle on 26 Ave, we're probably not going to go to that call, because by the time we get there, he's gone. Plus, is it a criminal offence? No. Is it a bylaw offence? No. So what we look at it, when we look at a call, we will prioritise it. If there's nothing going on, there's no calls and everyone's got a bit of dead time, a unit will go down there. Absolutely. If we're busy, we're not going to get to it. It will sit on the board maybe until we can get to it once the higher priority calls have gone. But if the information is really specific and good quality, absolutely we'll deal with it. So that's what we need for information.
So,
And if it's not an emergency, it goes through the 403-266-1234 call. That's the non-emergency line. If it's just information, it'll get filtered to me as the CRO. If you had information of someone on a bike 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning going to a specific address, you can call me, or you can put it through Crime Stoppers. Or just tell a member on the street if you see them, flag them down and tell them, and that information will get through them to me. But there's loads of different ways of reporting it, but we want good information. Some of these, developers are like, hey, we just bought a row of houses and we're going to squash them. Along comes COVID, they stop all the demolition permits, and then they realize they have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to make it secure. So I'll give you an idea of really what is happening with the abandoned program. About 2 years ago, we had an apartment building in St. Alta that had over 22 dealers in it. 22 dealers in an apartment building, that's a major issue. That's a 1970s New York issue. That's a bad problem. So what we identified from it was that we had someone who was making thousands and 50, 60 grand a month on rental, but failing to deal with the issues in the building. And they lived in a massive house and they didn't care, and we talked to them and they'd lied to us. And we realized that the city of Calgary didn't have the ability to shut a building down. Only under certain conditions around building regs like Kensington, Manor and that sort of thing. So what we did in District 2, we got Ward Sutherland and to come in, and he's a good man. And we sat down with him and we said, we've got a problem. Because fire do their thing, we do our thing, bylaw do their thing, and there's no coordination here. So when we're dealing with a building like that, we want to be able to have a massive impact on that building quickly. Fire have a 90-day fixed date. 90 days is not good for us. We need it quicker. IHS would only get triggered through certain ways. So we put the community safety response team together, and that is a joint task force. So let's just take, for instance, the issue that we have on 17A Street with those 10 buildings. In comes a developer with all good intentions to shut down that building, to shut them down and to crush them. But developer time is a lot slower than police time. We need stuff done quick, and we want it done now. We're pretty impatient people when it comes to this sort of stuff. And what happened was, this company was a very small company, and their plan was to come in and knock those buildings down and then build a condominium building. So there was power left on in there. The doors were unlocked. They put a flimsy fence around it. I spoke to them. Stuff was getting done slowly. There was a number of members of the public that backed on and overlooked those properties that were very vocal. Their concerns weren't exactly being addressed. And so what we did with CSRT is, once that building is abandoned and no one's in it, we can trigger CSRT. CSRT comes in with the weight of the city, and now it becomes expensive, because what happens with the city is they're like, hey, how you doing? You've got permits to knock this down. So why is it not being done? Oh, by the way, the Calgary police have spent 260 police hours there dealing with calls. If the average constable is earning $50 an hour, right? Put that into pounds, put dollars and cents, you're looking at thousands of dollars to deal with an issue you've created. So you either fix it or we will fine you. If you fail to knock it down, then by a certain date, only if a certain criteria is fulfilled, the city can actually come in and knock them down and then bill the people who own the buildings, and that's expensive. So what we have is, we force due diligence onto these people. You're saying you're going to knock this building down. When? Get it done, let's do it. And if there's a public safety or crime issue that comes around it, they are ultimately responsible for it. And so CSRT enforces everything from the Alberta Fire Code to the building code to all the bylaws under the city to public health for AHS, and then the crime for us. And it's coordinated through the Chief of Bylaw, Ryan Placatus, and he does an amazing job, and he has a great team of people that he works with, and they sit every few weeks and look at all. We have about 250 addresses in the whole city that are problematic, that are abandoned, and so that's what they do. And since that team has come up in the last 2 years, we've seen a huge change. What happened with the places on 17A Street? We were putting a huge amount of pressure on a very small development company that ultimately ran out of money, and that's what happened. So when they've got no money, even if we knock them into the ground with the city and they charge them 300 grand for doing it, it's a bill that ultimately the taxpayer will pay. So they held off, and then COVID crushed obviously all the demolition permits. So what we did was we dealt with that developer, and they turned the power off and the gas and everything else, and they put a fence around it. Our calls collapsed. We still get the odd one, and it still does attract people that try and climb up the fence. We get there and deal with them. But what I understand from in the last month is that a deal is being signed between the older company to a massive construction company, and their plans is to come in and squash it.
Okay, so that's pretty all wraps it up. I'd like to thank everybody for doing this. And again, the primary goal for this is to get people to get involved, to be part of the Crime Prevention Committee, which a lot of it is acting as a conduit between members of the community and the Calgary Police. And it's
Mark,
very...
I was hoping to just say two things or three things. One was the 311 app. I do highly recommend it. I've used it myself for snow clearing. It's worked. The city's obviously stopped by and taken care of icy roads and also graffiti. The committee itself, you get to meet with Rich Wall on a regular basis and tell him about all the issues. So if you are interested in trying to get organized around this stuff and report more of these kinds of issues, drop me a line. And then just the abandoned buildings. We did do a walkthrough with the city of Calgary approximately a month ago throughout all of Bankview and showed them all of the concerns in regards to the abandoned buildings, because we know they're a major issue. And they, like Rich say, that it's things are being done, but really I think it's through constant pressure that we'll start to see results. Sorry to interrupt, Mark. Thank you.
No, that's okay. Okay, and thank you very much, Nigel, for doing this, and look forward to seeing some of you guys on the committee. And again, one of the other initiatives that we're working on is to have the crime prevention committees from each of the communities all work together to create a bit of a network as well. So we'll be touching base on that. But other than that, I'd like to thank Constable Rich Wall for doing this again. It's fantastic to have him share his knowledge about what's going on in our community. Graydon Tranquilla and his experience in using Nextdoor, and I would strongly encourage everyone to check that out. So nextdoor.com, everyone that joins it is a verified member of being part of that community, and gives you the ability to then connect with your neighbors in very positive ways. I see a hand from Graydon. Graydon, did you want any final comments?
I guess anyone who would like more information on Nextdoor, just send me an email at gtranquilla@gmail.com. Okay, private email, gtranquilla@gmail.com. Thank you.
Okay, and that's about it. Again, thank you everyone for coming, and let's be safe out there. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot.